Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Visual Studio Toolbox Extensibility Edition. I'm your host, Leslie Richardson, and today we are continuing our series all about the new Visual Studio Extensibility model. So last time we talked a little bit about what that model is and what it all entails, why we even started to do it in the first place. The episode before that, or the episode after that, we talked about why or what even is a Visual Studio extension and defined a couple of common words and phrases and things that are going to show up for the rest of this series. And now we are going into the first of our deep dives into some of the different API pieces of this new extensibility model. So I am joined once again by Bertan, who's going to share with us how we can get started by essentially doing the foundation of most of your extensions, which is creating a command.
I'm happy to join back again. Hello, everyone.
Awesome. So yeah, before we get into it proper, what is a command?
So a command, when we talk about commands, what we talk about is pretty much any action that you can invoke in Visual Studio. So like a menu item is a command. If you right click on a Solution Explorer, these menu items are commands. You can also search from them from search bar, and like if you have key binding attached, editor, if you're typing in editor, like something like copy paste Control C is a command. So they are really the first entry points for most extensions into Visual Studio. So yeah, throughout the series, we're gonna continue on building an extension that showcases various features of the Visual Studio extensibility. And I'm gonna be starting with like showcasing a command, how to add a command, what to pay attention to, so on.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I guess I'll just demo the extension, like the extension that we're gonna be working on in this chapter. So what we're gonna be working on is our sample markdown linter extension, and what it does, its goal is to allow you to, on a markdown file, if you're editing a markdown file in Visual Studio, so let's open like the README file with some markdown that could create warnings. It doesn't like long lines, there's no header here. So we want to write an extension that you can run the linter on this to give you warnings about your markdown content. So this extension will have a single command in the tools entry. It's our markdown linter on current file, and the way we're gonna set it up, it's only gonna be available for markdown files. So if you have a C# file open, we want that command to be disabled because, well, the linter doesn't apply to C# files. So let's go back to contact. Okay, we can run it on this one. And if we run the command, what we want it to do is run the extension, and well, we have warnings for this file, and we can do the same for the README. And just for completeness, we have other warnings coming up for this file. So we're gonna be creating this extension now.
That is a very useful extension. So.
Yeah. And so before I do that though, I just quickly wanna talk about the overview of an extension in Visual Studio Extensibility, what it entails. So the 4 parts that we're gonna see today while creating the command is, you have an extension instance. Today we're gonna create this instance, add it to our project once the template is created, but in the future versions, we're actually gonna make this part of the template. This is gonna be your entry point that initializes the service collection used by dependency injection when creating extension parts. We do use dependency injection framework when creating parts. So in your constructor, if you have services that you want to consume, that's how you get those services. And if you want to add yours, you're going to see that extension instance is the place to add that. Extension parts are basically anything in the extension, a command handler, a tool window. You will see editor listeners, those are all extension parts. The important thing to notice here is extension parts are lazily initialized on demand based on their metadata. We're not gonna initialize everything at once. Like when your extension is loaded, every part kind of individually loads in as needed. The other thing we're gonna see is something called Visual Studio Extensibility, an object of type Visual Studio Extensibility. This is pretty much our entry point to the API surface for our IDE features, like document management editor. You're going to be seeing our demos using this object throughout the series. And then when we are talking about commands, we're going to be seeing something called a client context object. And this comes from the fact that our extensions are asynchronous. The commands are executed after user clicks on it, and like they can technically change the state. Like they can go to another document. The client context represents the state of the IDE, which documents were open, what was the active selection, what was the active document at the time of command execution. So we're going to be using that object to get the active view, active selection, as we're going to see soon.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So we got those words defined. And if you want to have more words defined, definitely check out the previous video where Maya and I talked about some common usage words in the extensibility space.
Yeah. So with that said, now I'm going to go to a new Visual Studio instance. So we're going to start building our extension.
Alrighty.
So the first thing we do, we go to new project dialog, and you can search for Visual Studio.extensibility. And we're going to use the default template for this demo. So we're going to be using Visual Studio.extensibility project. And well, let me name my solution. And so we're going to be building a Markdown linter extension. So let's name it as such. And we click create. And this template by default creates a single comment. And we can open that comment. And this is.
I assume you can add multiple commands
Oh
to
yeah,
the same
I mean,
extension.
sure. Yeah. The template starts with a single command. You can add more command instances, but this is basically a very simple extension. It has a single command. What we are saying here is the command ID is markdown linter extension.command1. This is a unique ID to represent that command within the IDE programmatically. It's not the display name. The display name becomes a second parameter. So while we are here, let's actually rename this command to what we want to do. So run markdown linter on current file command. That's it.
Nice.
Lengthy file name.
Gets the job done.
Yeah. And well, let's give it a better unique name. Run linter on current file. And let's set up the display name. This is what you saw in the tools menu when the command was displayed. Run markdown linter on current file. Placement is, we obviously want to place it in tools menu, so I'm going to leave that as it is.
Is there a general list of all the different places where you could theoretically put your command?
Yes, I mean, this enum is going to show you, right now we just exposed 3, but we're going to be extending this list. And the commanding documentation also tells you how to place in other places in Visual Studio.
Cool.
So, yeah. So one thing that was in the demo was the command was only enabled when like a markdown file was selected. If the file was a C# file, our command was not, as you saw, it was disabled. Mm-hmm. So the way you do that is we have, every command has rules on when it's enabled, when it's visible. We like to do this in a metadata-driven approach so that we don't actually have to load your extension as you use Visual Studio. Like ideally we only load your extension when the command is executed. And for that, we have an attribute called command enabled when, which defines when the command is enabled. And this attribute uses something called activation constraints, and they have different rules that you can specify. And fortunately, we documented all these rules in our VS Extensibility repo documentation. So if you go here, we talked about, we give a sample what a enabled when attribute looks like. And today we want to use the context for active selection file name. So we're going to be using a client context activation pattern, and we're looking at the active selection file name, and we're going to set the command enable when the file name matches ends with .md.
That so I'm glad that there is at the very least like a list in the documentation that gives you the right syntax for that. I know for me, regex and anything adjacent to that can kind of trip me up.
Yeah, and I will add, we are working on improving this experience a lot. Like this experience is gonna look fairly different, and it's gonna be improved. So, yes,
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned for new features in this area. So in this regard, I'm just gonna type this. The first argument here is the expression, which we only have a single item markdown selected. Then we have two arrays that defines the values of the expression. So since we only have a single term here, we're gonna be repeating that. The first array basically says the secondary, the order of secondary. And now here we can actually do our rule, which is client context shell dot active selection file name.
So what does the shell represent?
Shell represents the IDE state. I mean, it's a term that we used in the previous SDK as well. Basically, the window management layer, like what's your documents, where are your selections in the Solution Explorer, so on. So active selection file name here refers to the selection in Solution Explorer. So which item is selected there.
Cool.
And we want to basically match anything that ends with markdown file. So cool, we have a command that's enabled when there's a markdown file selected. If you execute it, it's gonna log a trace source information and it's gonna return. It's not gonna do anything exciting right now. So okay, how do we go forward from here? First, I'm gonna cheat a little and add existing items
Cool.
that
Cheating's
represents. Oh, there we go. Opened up nicely. That represents a local. These items, the reason I'm not showing them, they don't really depend on the extensibility SDK. Well, they do raise the diagnostics, but they are responsible for running the Markdown linter Node.js tool. And so I treat them as a local service. So they're helper utilities I added. It could be a package reference that I had added to my
Okay, so these files are actually doing the work that's.
Yes, they will run the linter, they will report diagnostics, but since we are focusing on commands here, I'm gonna skip the contents of it. This sample, by the way, is published in our repo. Like, we actually have this extension in our repo as a sample, so you can go browse these files.
Awesome. The link will be below too.
So, okay, we have the Markdown diagnostic service, so what do we do with this? Well, we want to add it as a local service where we can, like, as I mentioned, we are using dependency injection. So we want to be able to import it here. For that, we need to create a new extension class. So I'm gonna go add class, markdown extension.cs. And an extension class is basically something that inherits from extension, Visual Studio extensibility.extension. And normally we implement this class for you. If there is one missing, we'll generate one for you for your project. But in this case, we actually want to override one of the methods, which is initialize services. Oops, not that one. And now I lost my IntelliSense. All right. So this is where we would add services to our dependency injection collection so that it can be consumed by other parts. So what we want to do here is add an instance of Markdown diagnostic service so that this becomes available to other parts that like the command handlers, or in the future it will be editor listeners and so on.
Makes sense. And also, if you wanted to expand this further, I'm assuming you can add multiple services.
Oh yeah, I mean, you can add as many as you want here. This is the regular Microsoft Dependency Injection Framework we are using. It has all the same rules.
Cool.
So, and we want to use this experience consistently across the IDE, so this will be the place where you add your local service, essentially. And let's go back to command now that we have this part done. So now, okay, what we can do here, obviously we need to get that service. So, well, let's still keep trace source around. Logging is always useful. So let's get Markdown diagnostic service instance. I'll accept it. And we need to put this in a private variable, so Markdown diagnostic service. Okay, and let's capture that in the constructor so that we can use it in our command handler. And I am doing defensive programming here, so
It's always nerve-wracking, I find, to be writing code on camera. It's like, oh my god, my hands are shaking. I don't know how to spell the word dog.
And okay, so we have our service. So now what we're gonna do is we need to get if the command is executed, we're gonna call execute command async. We need to get the active selection from here and then pass it down to the servers. So the way we do that is use whenever a command is invoked, it's gonna call our execute command async method. I'm gonna convert it to, I'm gonna add the async keyword here because we're gonna be calling async methods throughout this. And in this case, I think it's simple. As I mentioned, client context is our entry point to get the state of the ID when the command was executed. So if we look at the context object, we can see there's get selected path. So this gives us the path to the file that was selected on the Solution Explorer. And most of our async methods are going to be using cancellation tokens. These are our indicators. Like if the user canceled for long commands, if the user canceled execution, we're going to set this cancellation token for you so you can actually cancel the long running operation. So selected file. And let's make sure, we don't expect this to be null, but let's double check for sure. And then we can use our service. There is Markdown diagnostic service, process file async, which takes a URI. And let's pass the same cancellation token again. And we're done. And let's log the information as well. Why not? We'll have a nice log at the end that we can refer if users say our extension is not working.
Yeah.
Finished processing. Selected file local path. And I'll make the compiler happy. And this is our extension. So as you see, it's very we try to make it as easy as possible, creating commands is a one-class thing. Obviously, you have to write the command handler, so that's where you have to add your services, but creating a command and as you see going forward, creating a tool window entity, they're always going to be just add this file here, plug it in, and then voila, it gets discovered and added to your extension automatically.
I just like seeing that most of this work is taking place in one file. I know there's been times in the past, not to go into too much detail, where sometimes having to hop around between files can be a pain to register something like this. So I like that it's kind of
we try to move most of the metadata into a context where it was close to the command. So here most of your command metadata name, display name is all included here. And we do have documentation on how you can localize this display name. So we do support localization.
And so Visual Studio already has a default list of icons for people to choose from, right?
Yes, and we have that in the non-monikers list. If you expand, we have all these icons that you can choose from.
Oh, so many.
Yep, we just want to use the extension one.
Awesome. Cool, so if you're feeling lazy like I am sometimes, you have a whole library of icons to choose from, which is cool too. So this was really great. Thank you so much, Bertan, for sharing how to create commands, which are basically the building blocks of most extensions that you'll be creating. So yeah, good stuff. So if you want to get started writing your own commands, go check out the VS Extensibility repo. It's filled with sample code, including this particular extension that we just went through, as well as a lot of documentation and other tips and tricks for you to get started with your own extension. So join us next time in this mini series as we talk about how to add user prompts and notifications to your extensions. So until next time, happy coding.
Thank you, happy coding.